If you have a straight ramp, which is leading up to the Great Pyramid, if it's going to carry blocks right up to what will be the top of the Great Pyramid, no gang of workers can haul a 20-ton block.
The Great Pyramid of Giza has stood for over 4,500 years, defying time and explanation. But here's the twist. Graham Hancock says he's uncovered hidden proofs that flip history on its head. In his words, "I found out who really built the pyramids, and I brought proof." What if the story you were taught in school is wrong, and a lost civilization with forgotten technology left behind this ancient mystery? Tonight, we'll explore Hancock's controversial evidence, new robotic discoveries inside the pyramid, and why archaeology circles are so divided. But first, who is Graham Hancock, and what exactly is his pyramid theory? Who is Graham Hancock, the man behind the theory? He's not an archaeologist, not a scientist, but Graham Hancock has been shaking the foundations of conventional history for more than 30 years. And that's exactly why his name keeps showing up in late-night debates, in forums, in podcasts, and now in Netflix's global hit Ancient Apocalypse. He positions himself not as a professor buried in dusty academic journals, but as an investigative journalist pulling back the curtain on secrets the mainstream doesn't want you to know. Hancock was born in Edinburgh in 1950 and began his career writing for newspapers like The Times and The Guardian. On the surface, nothing suggested he would become the man arguing that humanity has forgotten an entire chapter of its past. But as he traveled through Ethiopia, India, and South America, he began noticing patterns that archaeologists dismissed as coincidence, similar myths, similar monuments, and civilizations that seemed to appear out of nowhere. The deeper he looked, the more convinced he became. History as we know it is incomplete. His central thesis, the one that catapulted him into global controversy, is simple but explosive. According to Hancock, there once existed a lost civilization during the last ice age, around 12,800 years ago. This civilization, he argues, was wiped out in a cataclysm, perhaps triggered by a comet impact. The survivors, however, didn't just vanish. They carried their knowledge of engineering, astronomy, and mathematics and passed it down to what mainstream historians would call primitive hunter-gatherers. Those hunter-gatherers, suddenly supercharged with advanced secrets, became the builders of the world's first great monuments. The pyramids of Giza, Hancock suggests, are not just the work of the Egyptians we read about in school. They are echoes of a knowledge system far older, fingerprints of a lost civilization hidden in stone. That's why his work resonates so powerfully. It feels like an alternate map of human history, one that mainstream scholars have either ignored or suppressed. In his Netflix documentary, Hancock bluntly accuses archaeologists of arrogance, clinging to old timelines, and refusing to even consider that advanced technology may have existed before recorded history. And for audiences scrolling late at night, this isn't just another theory. It feels like a forbidden story, the kind of knowledge you're not supposed to stumble across. What's fascinating is how Hancock doubles down every time critics try to dismiss him. Take his most recent comment that he made in December 2024. While academics were still debating quarry marks and copper chisels, Hancock proposed an idea that sparked another storm online. What if pyramid construction was based on sound and levitation principles, technologies that modern science barely understands? He didn't claim to have solved it completely, but by introducing possibilities other than brute force stone hauling, he once again challenged archaeology's comfort zone. Whether you see him as a visionary or a provocateur, it's undeniable that Hancock keeps the conversation alive in ways that traditional scholars rarely do. And here's the irony. The very fact that he's not an archaeologist may be why his message spreads so fast. Instead of hiding behind academic jargon, he speaks directly to the public through best-selling books, Netflix specials, and YouTube interviews with millions of viewers. His style is personal, almost conspiratorial, as if he's letting you in on a secret the establishment doesn't want you to know. For many viewers, that feels more authentic than the polished voices of university professors who refuse to budge an inch. Of course, this outsider status comes with heavy criticism. Archaeologists accuse him of cherry-picking facts, romanticizing myths, and creating narratives that seem cinematic but do not hold up to peer assessment. Hancock, in return, argues that history itself is a kind of conspiracy where gatekeepers protect old narratives to defend careers and reputations. It's a feud that's been running for decades, and one that has only intensified since Ancient Apocalypse premiered on Netflix. So, who is Graham Hancock? He's the journalist turned iconoclast who refuses to accept history's official script. He's the man behind the viral claim, "I found out who really built the pyramids, and I brought proof." And whether you love him or roll your eyes, there's no denying that he's made ancient mysteries trend again in a way nobody else has managed. But here's the real question. Beyond the debates and the backlash, are there new scientific discoveries that might actually support his most radical claims? Hidden chambers and breakthroughs in pyramid exploration. Could the pyramids themselves be hiding secrets that mainstream archaeology missed for centuries? New technology is saying yes. For over 100 years, researchers believed the Great Pyramid of Giza was fully mapped. Every chamber, every passage, every hidden niche had supposedly been accounted for. But in 2017, an international team flipped that certainty upside down, using a technique called muon tomography, a kind of cosmic ray scanning. They detected something nobody expected, a massive void, at least 30 meters long, sitting directly above the Grand Gallery. To put that in perspective, this wasn't a crack or a minor cavity. It was the first major internal discovery inside the pyramid in more than a century. And it raised a question no one could easily answer. Why was this space there, and what was its purpose? The official line was cautious. Some experts said it might simply be structural, a way to relieve weight from the chambers below. But for others, including Graham Hancock, this was proof that the pyramid still holds hidden rooms, possibly sealed off since the day it was built. If that's true, then what exactly might be locked away inside? Ancient texts? Forgotten tools? Or something even stranger, something that hints at that lost civilization Hancock insists once walked the Earth. The mystery deepened in 2025, when technology once again pushed exploration forward. A UK-built robot, weighing just 5 kilograms, was designed to squeeze into places no human or larger machine could go. It was sent up one of the pyramid's narrow shafts, a tunnel so small even cameras had struggled to pass through. What it found stunned the entire world. At the end of the shaft, sealed for 4,500 years, the robot rolled into a hidden chamber. This wasn't just another empty cavity. On the chamber floor, faint but unmistakable colored symbols were visible, patterns that have yet to be explained. Were they ritual markings, construction notes, or perhaps the kind of hidden proofs Hancock talks about in his claim? "I found out who really built the pyramids, and I brought proof." Here's where the story takes a strange turn. The mission was abruptly halted. Officially, there were technical reasons. Unofficially, theories exploded online. Why stop at the moment of breakthrough? Why not study the chamber immediately? Was it bureaucracy, politics, or something more deliberate, an attempt to keep certain discoveries under wraps until the narrative could be controlled? For late-night truth seekers, the unanswered questions are exactly what make this moment so electrifying. Think about it. We are using 21st century robotics and cosmic ray imaging to peek into the most famous ancient structure on Earth, and we're still finding sealed spaces no one has ever seen before. The idea that we have already figured out the mysteries of the pyramid is called into question by just that. If entire chambers may have been hidden till today, what else could be buried behind those gigantic chunks of stone? Could this be the beginning of a new wave of discoveries that finally vindicate Hancock's lost civilization theory? Or will mainstream archaeology once again attempt to downplay what looks like undeniable evidence of secrets literally carved into the pyramid's heart? What's certain is that the Great Pyramid still isn't finished telling its story. And the real twist lies in what it took to build it. Because if these secret spaces needed accuracy and engineering skills much beyond what we attribute to ancient Egypt, we may be pushed to question who truly possessed the knowledge to create such a wonder. Engineering, marvels, and theories of advanced techniques. The Great Pyramid isn't just a pile of stone blocks. It's a structure so precise that even with today's tools, recreating it would be nearly impossible. Think about this. Millions of limestone blocks, each weighing several tons, aligned so perfectly that the base is off by less than an inch. That's not the kind of accident you get from trial and error. That's engineering mastery. And here's the kicker. Inside the pyramid, the level of craftsmanship gets even stranger. Take Christopher Dunn, a former aerospace engineer who studied the granite components of the pyramid. He wasn't looking at myths or legends. He was looking at the cuts, the finishes, the microscopic details. And what he found stunned him. The granite boxes in the Serapeum, for example, are cut so precisely that the corners are square within thousandths of an inch. For context, that's the kind of precision you'd expect from modern machine tools, not copper chisels and pounding stones. Dunn's conclusion? Whoever built these wasn't just stacking rocks. They were machining stone with a level of control that feels, frankly, futuristic. So here's the question. How do you reconcile that? The mainstream view tells us ancient Egyptians worked with basic hand tools, ropes, and sheer manpower. But when you see evidence of advanced precision, you start to wonder, were they using techniques we've either forgotten or never understood in the first place? Graham Hancock seizes on these points in his claim, "I found out who really built the pyramids, and I brought proof." To him, this isn't a coincidence. It's the signature of a lost civilization, one that left traces of advanced knowledge behind. And it's not just in the Great Pyramid. Recent research on the Step Pyramid at Saqqara revealed something extraordinary. A hydraulic system. Yes, water engineering nearly 4,700 years ago. Archaeologists uncovered structures that looked like channels and storage systems designed to manage pressure. That is, people didn't just use water for rituals or to stay alive. They may have also used it to move and lift big stones. Imagine that engineers in the past used hydraulics to move blocks that weighed dozens of tons. All of a sudden, something that seemed impossible with manpower alone starts to seem possible. But that discovery changes everything. If Egyptians had access to advanced hydraulic technology, even in a primitive form, then what else might they have known that's been lost to time? Was this knowledge passed down from an earlier civilization, the same one Hancock insists left behind the blueprint for the pyramids? For years, we've been told a neat story. Armies of workers, ropes, ramps, and determination. But the precision machining evidence and the hydraulic theory don't sit neatly in that narrative. They point to something completely different, a level of intelligence and creativity that is on par with current methods that is hidden from plain sight. And maybe that's the main point here. The Great Pyramid wasn't just a tomb, it was a statement. It says, "We knew things you've forgotten." It forces us to question whether history is as straightforward as the textbooks claim. So let me ask you, if these techniques really existed, what kind of society could pull them off? What kind of vision, planning, and knowledge base does it take to build something so flawless it's still standing after 4,500 years? That's the question mainstream science has to wrestle with. Academic pushback and the ongoing debate. Not everyone agrees. In fact, the moment Graham Hancock says, "I found out who really built the pyramids, and I brought proof," mainstream archaeology circles roll their eyes so hard you can practically hear it. And it's not because they don't care about the mystery, it's because they believe the answers are already sitting right in front of us, carved into stone, backed by digs, and supported by decades of research. To them, the pyramids aren't unsolvable puzzles or evidence of a lost civilization. They're extraordinary feats, yes, but feats accomplished by flesh and blood Egyptians, working with tools and techniques entirely within the realm of possibility. So, what's their case? Let's start with the big one, the lost civilization hypothesis. In Scientific American, archaeologists flat out reject Hancock's claim that an advanced culture, older than ancient Egypt, passed down lost knowledge. To them, there's simply no trace of such a civilization. No ruins, no cities, no infrastructure. Nothing you'd expect if a super-advanced society really existed 12,000 years ago. And when archaeologists look at the Great Pyramid, they don't see fingerprints of an ancient high-tech culture. They see the culmination of a long learning curve, starting with smaller step pyramids, moving to bent and red pyramids, and finally achieving perfection at Giza. In other words, evolution, not sudden alien-like intervention. And here's where it gets concrete, literally. Excavations around the Giza Plateau have uncovered what Egyptologists call the lost city of the pyramid builders. We're talking bakeries with industrial-scale bread ovens, cattle bones from daily meals, sleeping quarters for thousands of workers, and even evidence of organized healthcare. That's not the signature of slaves being whipped by overseers or mysterious outsiders swooping in with secret tech. It's a city, a workforce settlement built for skilled laborers who had food, housing, and medical treatment while they raised stone after stone. If true, that's proof the pyramids were built not by an unknown lost race, but by Egyptians themselves, supported by one of the first large-scale social organizations in human history. But Hancock's argument doesn't stop at workforce logistics. He points to mathematics. Ratios inside the pyramid he claims encode Earth's measurements, like the circumference of the planet. On the surface, it sounds jaw-dropping, but academics have picked this apart too. A published critique argues that Hancock is forcing the math to fit his story. Sure, if you cherry-pick numbers, you can create coincidences. But does that mean ancient Egyptians secretly knew the Earth's exact dimensions thousands of years before anyone else? Or does it mean we're retrofitting patterns that aren't really there? For scholars, it's the latter. They see it as pseudo-archaeology dressed up in big numbers. And then there's the tone. In the BBC's Atlantis Reborn Again, Egyptologists accused Hancock of romanticizing the past in a way that blurs the line between scholarship and storytelling. They argue his theories don't just stretch evidence, they undermine the real achievements of the Egyptians by suggesting the people who actually lived there couldn't possibly have done it without help from outsiders. For archaeologists who've spent lifetimes digging in the sand, that argument feels almost insulting. But here's where it gets interesting. While they're quick to dismiss Hancock's grand claims, even mainstream scientists admit the pyramids are still surprising us. Take the discovery of a massive hidden void inside the Great Pyramid using cosmic ray scans. That's real science, not theory. And even though we don't know what it is yet, a chamber, a structural cavity, something else, it proves that after thousands of years, this monument is still holding secrets. Archaeology is careful, cautious, and slow to jump to conclusions. But moments like this remind us that not everything is nailed down. So we're left with a tug-of-war. On one side, Graham Hancock talks about lost cultures, advanced technology, and history that has been long forgotten. He says that the pyramids are proof of something much bigger than what we learn in schools. And on the other hand, the academic establishment defends their decades of research, saying Hancock is making up stories that do not take into consideration the hard evidence. Both sides support each other. Hancock's big ideas make the headlines, and archaeologists feel like they need to protect the records even more. And you have to ask yourself, is the truth somewhere in between? Could the pyramids represent both an extraordinary human effort and something we still don't fully grasp? Could it be that mainstream scholars are right about the workforce, but wrong about underestimating ancient knowledge? Or is Hancock reading too much into what could simply be brilliant engineering for its time? Either way, one thing is undeniable. The Great Pyramid refuses to be ordinary. Even as science is still trying to figure out how it was built, there's still something magnetic about its mystery. The discussion is still going strong because of the tension between Hancock's shocking claims and the cautious responses from academia. So, what are your thoughts on this? Who really built the pyramids? Were they the crowning achievement of Egyptian skill and organization? Or are they breadcrumbs pointing to something humanity has forgotten? And as new technologies like robots and cosmic scans reveal new layers, what revolutionary ideas could we find next? Because whether you accept Graham Hancock's warnings or the archaeologists' steady disputes, one truth remains. The pyramids are still talking, and we're only now starting to pay attention. The Great Pyramid stands as a paradox, half history book, half mystery novel. Graham Hancock believes it's the last great clue left behind by a forgotten civilization. Mainstream archaeologists insist it's the ultimate triumph of Egyptian genius and human determination. But as new technology pierces its walls, cosmic rays, robotics, AI scans, we're finding that the truth may be stranger than either side imagined. Maybe the past isn't fully written. Maybe the pyramid is still waiting to tell us its story. So, what do you think? Are the pyramids proof of a lost advanced culture, or is Graham Hancock chasing shadows? Please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Thanks.